SLO is a formal way to capture what skillful teachers and leaders already do. It allows them to look at the gaps their students have and work collaboratively to try and close that gap. So this is a tool for equity because you don't look at a group of students and assume. You use data to support it, and then you set measurable targets. You help kids make incremental growth based on what the data says.
It personalizes the gaps we have in our schools, those kids who aren't making progress, and it takes the data from numbers form to a real life face.
It did help us look at students a little differently and look at what we were doing differently. The teachers have to see that it's purposeful. It's not just another thing to do. It connects with the work they're already doing. And so we took and provided time for teachers to come together, to collaborate, to decide as a team what would be an important student learning objective, and then to decide individually what the needs were in their classroom.
Think about what you read. Use this information.
If a teacher is having a hard time with their SLOs, they turn to their team at their schools to help support them.
As a principal, I think it's important that I have structures in place to provide teachers that support, to collaborate, to make meaning of what research says about good teaching, how to reach kids who aren't achieving, and that we make the SLO an evolving, living document. I see the SLO as really very closely aligned with our school improvement work, not something extra to be done. So for us, SLOs are a topic of every other rolling meeting that we have. It is very embedded into the work we're doing so that no one's out there on their own trying to figure it out.
Once a week we meet to discuss the process of SLOs, how we're progressing, any problems we're running into or questions we have. For teachers, the SLO fosters risk-taking to get you a little bit out of your comfort zone and try to take a lesson that you've done over and over again and see if you can just do it totally differently and get better results. There's a similar component to national board certification where you have students that you track their progress, and you try to make sure that you're focusing on what works for them.
The SLO does help teachers to chunk and break down their planning, to think about what are the most important things that I need students to know and be able to do in my course.
So the teachers and the leaders are growing and learning, and they're perfecting their craft.
Stan, where did you lose a point or two?
I didn't.
We always have a conversation with teachers so that we can talk about their decision making and the groups that they decided to focus on. So it's definitely a collaborative effort.
The SLO in my self-contained math class is looking at our school focus, which is writing. Specifically, I'm looking for students to be able to make a mathematically viable claim in their writing. I think because of the SLOs, teachers are more aware of students' strengths and weaknesses and specific strategies they can use to target certain groups of students.
One of my SLOs is for my children to essentially compose a paragraph in which they have a topic sentence, 2 to 3 detailed sentences, and 1 closing summary statement. I chose that particular goal because I recognize severe writing deficits with my students, particularly for my young men who had a tendency to compose run-on sentences. Some of the strategies I'm utilizing with my identified students would be, for example, using a graphic organizer, which allows them to kind of break this paragraph down 2 components.
I think it's kind of critical when you go to write an SLO and how you carry out an SLO is that you're working with other people in the building and you're talking to other people in the building. It helps me to give a focus for the year. So what am I going to do this year? How am I going to get these students to understand this concept? I'm coming up with different strategies that I can really help them to understand what does clockwise mean, where does it come from? And when you're focused on something, it really helps you to get better strategies out of it.
As an ESOL teacher, I chose a small group of first graders, and I had 2 SLOs. The first one was related to analyzing the vocabulary words in a question. It directly relates to our SIP, and it's our whole instructional focus. So it wasn't something more that we do here, it's what we do here.
I work with a group of 4 other algebra teachers. We got a professional development day to sit down as a group, think about our students. We used data from a pre-assessment that we created. So the goal was to have students graph and interpret the graph of a linear function. Once we landed on our SLO goal, we looked up different online resources that we could use to support our students and support us in teaching the students. Doing the SLO has made me a better teacher now because I'm really forced to think about my teaching and think about how am I helping the students, what am I actually doing to make them improve.
Every Friday we listen to a different type of music, and they've been writing some feedback about what they hear, and they're not really using music-specific vocabulary that they know, but they're not applying it when they're writing in their listening logs. So I've been working with our staff development teacher to build some vocabulary lessons, to work on some worksheets for the students. It's definitely made me a better teacher to work on an SLO because I'm trying to find different ways to access my students.
When you go through this entire process and you have some of your targeted students reach their goal and some fall a little short of doing so, it makes you really, really reflective and focused. As a teacher, our goal is for all of our students to be successful, and the SLO is merely a tool to help them get there.
Here at Longview, we have students with severe, profound, and multiple disabilities. I wrote my SLO for this year with my teammates, Elena and also Lisa. My SLO goal this year is for students to increase their functional receptive vocabulary by 1 or more words. None of our students have speech or sign, so we use assistive technology, we use objects as much as we can. Having this SLO has helped me to become a more careful planner. It's helping me focus on making sure that I'm purposefully and carefully planning in opportunities to teach the vocabulary.
As a principal, when it comes to SLOs, we have to do the same thing that teachers do. We really have to have a focused group of individual students that we're looking at. This year I'm focusing on first grade students, African American males and Hispanic males, and their achievement in the areas of reading and mathematics. Okay, so where do you get your information from? Where do you get your data from?
The SLO is a process, and it starts with finding your group of students which need you most. The idea is that what is good for that group of students will be ultimately good for everybody else. The main focus of the SLO is the reflection. We're learning to reflect on our practices, what worked, what needs improving, how am I going to do it differently next time.
My reflections on my teaching tend to be more general. It's working for the class in the whole. 90% of the students are getting it. You know, that seems like a good job, but if 90% of the students are getting it, that means there's 2 or 3 who aren't. And so the SLO really makes you stop and think about those 2 or 3 who aren't getting it and think about what might you try differently.
It's about reflecting on your practice and trying something that's new to you. And if your SLO reflects what you've done to tweak and reflect and the growth you've had, then you've written a wonderful SLO. It's not always about the results, it's about the process, and the results merely inform our next steps.
We shared ideas with each other and we reflected. It was really a great opportunity for us to kind of build our school community also.
The SLO process has made it easier for us to be able to say, I tried this and it didn't work. Because if something doesn't work, I feel like somebody else has another strategy that I can use.
We moved from an isolated format of close your door and work in this environment to really having conversations about what is our collective responsibility. It's not just about my class and my kids, but it's about all of our children. And how do we support each other in terms of achieving that?
The SLO is a learning opportunity for teachers. And what it does for students is it helps them reach their full potential.
When you're actually meeting the needs of your students and they're becoming more proficient, it really builds their confidence and I think puts students a lot more at ease. So I definitely have seen a change in a more positive attitude in a lot of our students.
Anytime we focus in on students' needs and we're very targeted and specific, we close the achievement gap.
SLOs help you focus on the work that we're called to do.